The repairman fixes and restores everything in a row from weapons to actions. There are people with a strange talent, they can return memories to things. The hero wipes his sword and shines with satisfaction at what he has done. This story is about exactly such a person. In one of the city taverns, a traveler in a fit of rage throws his shield on the floor and shouts that it is complete junk. How could the hero have ordered him to use the shield? He wants him to see what he has done. He is only useful because of one ability. The Seeker invited him to his parties out of pity, and that guy just hisses with frustration. The blonde does not believe that they dared to send him such a worn-out shield, as it was an S-rank mission. The hero tries to justify himself. The shield today could only repel the wyverns attack a monster, true, of rank A, but still. The adventurer interrupts him and shouts that it's all because he used up all his strength. The hero was with them, although he did not even know how to fight properly, but the knight believed that any fool could handle it. The hero quietly repeats the last words and remembers how he worked. To open his own shop, he, as a repairman, earned money fixing things and weapons, although he was useless in battle. But his thoughts were interrupted by the sharp cry of the blonde man. He called the hero a servant and ordered him to finally get up from that position. The hero got angry and agreed in response, and the blonde man was very surprised. The dark-haired boy quietly says that he only wants to make peace and leaves the tavern. The traveler sighs with relief. Someone raises the shield and excitedly says that it is incredible. He heard that this shield can protect against a wyvern attack and wonders if it belongs to the blonde knight. He notices that Lind has come and throws him that some freeloader recently fixed his shield but still has no intention of returning it. Lind confidently says he will take the shield and walks away. The blonde man convinces himself that the one who came like such things all sorts of junk recalls a strange expression on his face, but what difference does it make? The nervous repairman now thinks that he is still an adventurer, but completely unfit for battle, and in his head echoes the shout of that boy. The hero only slows everyone down, an amateur repairman and a burden. The boy was sure that he was capable of first-class deeds. He sighs heavily because he does not know what to do now. He has no money how to move towards his dream now. Then Lind calls and asks if Repairman San will fulfill his request. The hero jumped up in surprise and strained to recall this traveler. Could it be that he really knows about him as a repairman? The one who came promises to pay generously if they fix his sword. The repairman asks again, even more surprised. They move to a more comfortable place, and the hero asks if he understood correctly the sword really belongs to Lin's son. He confirms this, and the repairman falls silent for a moment. He examines the sword and says that it seems it was hardly used, but it is an important thing. The blade, though nicked and chipped, has the family crest clearly engraved. The hero returns the sword, and for a moment the adventurer sees the light from the blade's reflection playing in the boy's eyes. The master, after a thorough inspection, says it is clear that the sword was cared for. He believes it is an antique, and probably after the repair Lind will not be able to use it as before. If the seeker trusts him, the hero will do everything he can. The decision remains with the client. Lind says so be it, asks Laerkun to work with him. Laer gladly agrees. The hero lays the sword on the cloth and recalls his childhood. Then he was told that if he stayed too long, his father would scold him again. Little Laer could not tear himself away from that beauty. He asked his grandfather if it was true that he made that plate. It was very beautifully decorated. The grandfather then sighed and said that it was not so, he only repaired it. The grandson did not know that word. The man said simply, he restores missing parts of any objects, regardless of their shape or color. Grandpa was beaming with joy as he looked at all these things. He asked Lyra to look at them. They are hiding memories. Little Lyra asked his grandfather to allow him to try. It was the grandfather who taught the hero everything, and with these memories he sets about the repair. The hero carefully cleans the sword and hardens the blade again. He cast a spell on the weapon. The sword flared up, and smiling, he decided that everything was ready. A few days later, Lair comes to collect his reward, looks into the bag and trembles. He doesn't understand how it happened, so he asks in response, maybe something's wrong. Because he can't believe all this gold is for him, there's so much there. The traveler confirms this with a gentle smile. The hero has done an incredible deed. The boy still does not accept it, saying he was just glad to be helpful and wonders why Lind came to him. He says he saw a fight near the tavern. This scares the liar. He again remembers how he was called a servant and ordered to leave his post. The boy clenches his fists tightly. Lind asks if he understood correctly that the hero fixed that shield. The boy freezes in surprise. The traveler moved on. It seemed to him that this item was often used, but he did not notice any large or new scratches on the shield. And he was still repelling monster attacks, and after each repair, his survivability was restored. He did not think an ordinary repairman could handle such a task. Perhaps the hero put in a lot of effort to work with him. After these words, the boy blushed and confessed embarrassedly. Honestly, he has no experience yet despite all attempts. He is only at the very beginning of his path. Lair says that his grandfather was a repairman and left him a workshop. Everything there from the keys to the smell of grease reminds him of him, so this place is very important to him and he cannot give up, at least for the sake of the workshop. Still, the boy perfectly understands that he will have to learn a lot to become a true master, until one day he opens his own shop. Lind, after a short pause, says that this sword actually belonged to his deceased father, and this surprises Lair. The hero clearly remembers how the seeker said that this was his sword, and how upon inspection he noticed scratches and cracks and a clearly carved coat of arms. Lind says that when he just started his adventurer's path, he used this sword, so now it looks like this. He was afraid that the sword was no longer good for anything. He would be grateful if the hero could repair it. The seeker carefully touches the blade and continues, then the memory of the father can come alive again. These words touch the liar. He remembers how his grandfather taught him, asked him to look at a thing that had its own memories. The hero thinks he has already decided. He will definitely become a repairman like his grandfather, a master who knew how to fix memories. Lara jumped up and sincerely thanked Lind-san, and the seeker replied that he is the one who should thank the hero, and then addressed the boy. Lind seriously asks if Laird will do it for her dream. Sparks lit up in the hero's eyes. He looks once again at the bag of gold and quietly agrees. And then he shouts loudly and joyfully that it is true, he will do everything to make his dream come true. The seeker also smiles happily and promises that the boy will probably have many orders very soon. The hero, with an unclear expression on his face, says that he might really be right. A few days later, in a very difficult dungeon, the adventurers encountered an angry dragon. They were frightened, and the dragon appeared again at the lower entrance. The dragon becomes increasingly furious and attacks the heroes. One of the adventurers doubts that they can defeat it. The equipment is too weak. He advises retreat and calls for escape, but Lind stays. He prepares for the attack and begins to draw his sword from the sheath. Lind rushes at the enemy and shouts that he will not retreat whoever stands before him. No one can withstand this sword. His eyes flash as he swings the sword. With one strike, the traveler defeats the dragon, and his team cannot believe their own eyes. Meanwhile, Lind wipes the sword, lifts the shiny, whole blade and giggles, calling Lair incredible. A long line stretches in front of the hero's workshop. Lind goes inside, and Lair welcomes him to the memory repair. The seeker enthusiastically says that the hero is very nice and notes that there is no shortage of clients. The boy replies that it is all thanks to Lind-san. Lair shows that he uses his workshop both for its intended purpose and for repairs, although the space there is a bit small. The seeker now understands that this is a good start and hopes that the boy will succeed because his work is worth it. The hero stands in amazement. He does not understand what the interlocutor means. He explains that he currently leads a group of SSS-level participants, and many acquaintances have already enthusiastically said what a wonderful sword he has. Lair, puzzled, asks to wait. Now it is clear where so many orders come from, although it just opened. Who would have thought it would be so cool? He, of course, says he is glad Lind helped him so much, but in his soul, he sadly thinks that this seeker clearly overestimates his abilities and nothing good will come of it. Suddenly, a client enters the workshop, greets the master, and says he has something to deliver to him. Lair, puzzled, replies that he is ready to listen and asks Lind-san to wait. The seeker agreed and thought, incredible how the hero became popular in such a short time. Now he is calm about him. The girl approaches Lind and irritably asks how much longer she has to wait here, and the seeker replies that he is very sorry. And he calls the girl Asiya-sama. The client leaves the shop and thanks the repairman, our hero, thanks the man for the order. He sighs now he can rest, but suddenly remembers Lin's son, and when Lin and Asiya enter, the boy exclaims, "Welcome." Lair leads them to the workshop, notices that the seeker has a guest today and asks who this girl is, and she slightly ironically says that only common people would call her this girl, and adds, "My name is Asiya." She sharply orders Lin to immediately cut off the hero's head. Lair is frightened and realizes that he called him a commoner. The traveler laughs and tells Asiya-sama not to worry so much. The man says that the master's name is Liar. He is the owner of Memory Repair, and Lind honestly admits, of all the workshops he only goes here, the level of hero repairs here is simply top-notch. The hero, stunned, asks again for last words, and the man, barely whispering, says he is glad to meet you and his name is Lair Descale. Asiya, with a serious expression, looks at him attentively. She confesses she wouldn't be here if she didn't know Lind, and immediately after that the girl shows the dress. Lair looks at the child's dress in surprise and asks for permission to examine it. The hero notices that the item looks worn, the fabric is damaged, the seams are coming apart, and wonders what kind of thing it is. Sia, who clearly does not want to say anything, is surprised. Does the repairman really not understand that this is a dress? Lair agrees, but that is not what he asked about. The girl did not understand what he was asking, and her request was more important than anything, so she asks the boy to speak as briefly as possible. The hero does not know what to answer and thinks she is a difficult child. Lind intervenes in the conversation and says that what the repairman sees before him once belonged to a Sissy-sama's mother when she was very young. The liar asks again, and his gaze again sticks to the dress. He realizes that when the girl was very small, some mysterious master created a truly wonderful thing, and despite all the problems, this dress is still very valuable. The hero asks what to do with it. Lin begins to explain, but suddenly Azia stands up. She sharply orders Lin to pay attention to what she says. The man smiles in response. The hero draws attention to himself. Isia explains that she wants Lair to bring the dress to perfection as soon as possible. That's all. The girl stands up and before leaving, says that's all, and Lind also says goodbye and says they are leaving. Lair thoughtfully contemplates Ashisama's request to take her order as soon as possible, but does not understand why, and quietly whispers to Lindasama. The hero apologizes for not letting him go. The traveler replies that it's okay and adds the one who should apologize is the one who didn't properly explain anything to him. Meanwhile, the repairman prepares to listen. He asks why Asiasan wants him to help her as soon as possible, and Lind thoughtfully considers the answer. He says that the girl might have seemed too intrusive to him, but in reality, she just wants to fix the dress. This item is connected to her memories, and the hero immediately recalls his grandfather. Lair explains that's exactly why he wanted to learn about that dress. The traveler explains that a few years ago, he worked closely with Asiya-sama during one mission. Ashisama's mother, Miranda-sama, was truly a kind person. To be honest, the owner of the dress is the same Miranda-sama. The hero asks again if she is incurably ill. Lind confirms, and Lair continues to listen silently. A few years ago, she was struck by an unknown disease. No doctor could find a cure, and with each day she got worse. Now, although she constantly sleeps, she suffers terribly, and now Lair understands. The fast continues. When the time comes, Ajya-sama will take her place. It seems he has already said everything. The man bows his head and asks to be forgiven. He is very sorry. Lair is very surprised and asks why she should lower her head. It is not Linda's fault. The stress is too strong. He does not manage to finish. Linda again tells him that this dress is, above all, a precious memory from a person who is important to him. The hero listens silently. And then he says that, supposedly, when Asiya-sama was little, she often wore it. The seeker confirms this and adds that there is one famous master who can fix anything. That is why they came here, relying on his abilities. The hero understands that this was probably a big request from Lin-san. He says aloud that he understands and will gladly fix it. They can trust him. Lin thinks about him. Lair asks if there is something he should be wary of. He recalls this is exactly what grandfather always said. The boy spins the shop's name and memory repair in his head and confidently repeats to himself. This time he will make every effort and do the impossible. The hero says the truth aloud. The dress is really very old. He has never seen such a style. He has explained that it is because the dress was tailored for the previous owner Miranda-sama. No wonder the boy is doing this for the first time. Larry notices that she is now. Lind immediately understands the question and confirms. The hero asks in surprise why he was called a famous master and entrusted with the dress, and the man explains that he only repeated what Miranda-sama once said. The boy thought it turned out strangely simple. He is a famous repairman. Is it really all because of her? A second later he jumps up, thanks Linda-sama again, and promises to do everything possible. A few days pass. Lair thinks that the dress seems to have been restored, but something is wrong with him. He sighs heavily. The boy realizes with horror that if he had brought the dress to Lin-san, Azusama would definitely have gotten angry. He recalls how she ordered his head to be cut off from his shoulders. He comes to the right place and wonders if this is really it. The boy stands in shock, looking at the huge building. He did not think people could live like this. Linsama did not tell him anything about this, so now he thinks with anxiety and curiosity, who is this Asiyasana? He stammers and quietly addresses the servant. With a stern face he asks what exactly the hero needs. The boy explains that he came to Asiya-sama about the dress and introduces himself. Asiya-sama notices something. She is not sure if it is really him. Lair keeps making up excuses honestly. He's not some suspicious guy. The servant was about to kick him out, but suddenly Ozzy appeared. She asked what he was doing here, and the repairman was glad to see her. The girl wonders why he broke into her house and who he is. She restrains herself and says it's all because of Lena. The hero asks him for forgiveness. He just wanted to know. The girl asks what it is. The servant anxiously asks if everything is all right. Asiya reassures him, and meanwhile Lyra hands her a sheet of paper. It contains notes about the old restoration, and it seems he needs to follow them. The dress clearly once had some decoration, and he really wants to restore it to its original appearance for the sake of its mother, but he cannot manage it alone. If Asia-sama allows, he would like to learn more from her about what she knows. In one city store, he had already seen something similar that could be on this dress. Maybe some part of it was lost, or he really wants to find out what she thinks and what she knows. The girl asks again about the dress, and now she is interested in where the boy could have seen such a store. If she allows, Lyra will show everything, find and bring it. The hero bows and runs away, and Asia tightly clutches the notes. The girl enters the room, and suddenly childhood memories flood in. She slides open the drawer where a small brooch is visible and remembers how she called her mother. Then she asked her mother why she had not thrown away the old dress. Her mother replied that it was a very important memory for her. Asia did not understand these words, and Miranda said that the girl was probably still too young. Asia looked surprised at her mother's happy expression and suddenly noticed the brooch. Miranda confirmed this and said that the ornament was probably stuck. "The dress in such a condition you can't save it anymore," she said, and unclipped the brooch. And she gave it to her daughter, saying that she wanted Asia to keep it because her daughter is a wonderful girl who, when she grows up, will definitely meet a wonderful person and will always want to see his image and everything connected with him. Emerging from memories, Asia takes the ornament and leaves the room with it. Now Lyra is in despair. He is incapable of anything. Can he do nothing with this dress? He thinks he has no time left, but the hero decides to at least try to look today. He held his breath in surprise when Asia-san entered the workshop. The girl bows her head and says she apologizes for her behavior. She fully realizes that she is asking for the impossible. Lyra silently looks at her. Asia continues to apologize. She regrets entrusting the dress to another person. She wanted to say something to the hero. The girl admits that she still does not trust him, but if it helps her mother. Lyra sharply says after these words that he did not ask to be trusted. He is just a repairman and does everything he can. With a trembling voice, he explains that he is simply trying to recreate her through Miranda the same thoughts and memories. During these words, the hero begins to stagger and loses consciousness. Asia screams and runs to him. Embarrassed hero, laughing, apologizes he just lost his balance. The girl helps gather the scattered sheets and begins to look through them. The liar tries to restore the order of the pages. Asia takes the hero by the hand, says she trusts him and asks to fix the dress of memories, and with these words places her mother's brooch in his palm. Lyra wanted to say something to her, but suddenly Lind runs in, shouting. The girl is stunned by his appearance. The traveler says they must return as soon as possible because Miranda is alone and the heroes are frightened. Asia jumps up and rushes to the exit. Lyra stops her and asks her to wait. At that moment, Asia's father is sitting in the house next to his wife, crying and pleading with Miranda not to go because he is terribly worried about where his daughter is running around. Here she enters the room with the liar and Lind. The father calls her, and when he sees the dress she is wearing, he is genuinely surprised. Asia approaches her mother. Miranda opens her eyes and responds to her daughter. The girl smiles brightly and says that she is very happy. She is so lucky to be her daughter. She recalls those words about growing up and says that she still does not understand what her mother meant that day, but promises to one day become as wonderful a woman as she is. The woman looks at her daughter with surprised eyes. Asia asks her mother to remember forever how happy she is. Miranda quietly calls her daughter by name. She says through tears that she is very beautiful. Her hand trembles strongly. Then the woman recalls when she was a child herself how her future husband caused her stress and how she unwrapped that gift. How she put it on for the first time and with trembling in her chest, showed it to her fiancé. How happy they were then. Miranda is still crying and smiling. She sincerely thanks her family for everything. A few days pass. The hero is working in the shop when suddenly Asia approaches him and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. Lyra is stunned that Asia-san has come. He leads the girl to the room. She bows her head, apologizes for losing patience while fixing her mother's dress, and sincerely thanks the hero with all her heart. After that, she puts something on the table. The repairman asks what it is. Asia says that it is an item that was dear to her mother, and Miranda wanted her daughter to give it to the hero. Lair silently looks at the stack of papers. Now he understands what he was given. Miranda-san named the first tailor of her dress long to scale, his grandfather. She sincerely apologized for not being able to attend the funeral, thanked him for everything, and hoped he was not angry with her. When the hero read that name, instantly before his eyes appeared the grandfather who worked with that dress. He remembered his words that all they do is just repairing someone's important memories, and these words deeply moved Asia. She confesses, honestly, from the first moment, Mom asked about that hero. The girl simply did not want to entrust her mother's important memories to some stranger. It seemed dangerous, but she did not know what to do at all. It was so good that they were so similar. The heroes begin to smile. Lair smiles and agrees with Azia-san. The girl pouts and asks not to call her some stranger anymore. These words scare the hero. The girl suggests, since that's the case, drop the formalities and just call me Asia, and the boy, embarrassed, begins to excuse himself. He did not mean that. He thinks that a young lady like her should not be addressed like that, she should not hear such words, so Asia suggests just to consider that she did not say that. The hero giggles and says that now they have an agreement. At first, Lair thought she was just a spoiled brat, but now he is sure she is kind. He recalls how she looked at their first meeting, as if commanding to be called Your Majesty. The hero thinks that his shop started working only thanks to Linsan and Asia, and remembers how the adventurer asked him to fulfill a request, and Asia said she trusted him and asked to fix the dress of memories. He should be grateful to them. The girl at this moment looks at him inquisitively, surprised by the prolonged silence, and Lyra speaks aloud, although he had already talked about it. He is happy to meet Asia again. She, with a radiant smile, says the feeling is mutual, and the boy also smiles in response. Here the hero suddenly remembers something and asks where Linsan is today. Asia tries to answer, but someone peeks into the shop. A man in worn and dirty clothes apologizes. Lair is ready to listen to him and asks what happened. The guest hesitates, takes something out of his pocket, falls to his knees, and asks to fix this thing. He raises his head and extends a handkerchief on which lies a broken hairpin. The hero tries to ask about that thing, but the man who entered does not listen to him. He jumps up, swears to pay, asks again to fix everything, and runs away, while the liar stands with his mouth agape. Asia looks closely at the hairpin and says she has seen it somewhere before. Lair asks her to think carefully. She agrees she has to remember. She suggests that the hairpin might have belonged to the young man's mother, and the hero agrees, possibly. Something made him wary. He looked as if from the wilderness, so where did he get that hairpin? The hero instantly notices. Although the hairpin is broken, it is clearly an extremely expensive item. The girl, after a moment of silence, suggests that it was probably stolen. The boy agrees again. Everything is possible among the poor. Many earn their bread through thefts and other crimes, but for some reason he feels that it was not stolen from her. He remembers how his face twisted when he asked it was too serious. The liar thinks deeply, and Asia sees it. She says that in any case she can be relied upon. She will try to find out something about this pin. The hero begins to shine with happiness. The girl reminds that she has already promised this, and now it is her time. The ship is waiting for her. Lair says goodbye to her and says that from now on they will work together. Several days pass. Asia is in the castle of the Kingdom of Elite, and she is still trying to remember where she might have seen this thing. She tirelessly flipped through old books and encyclopedias in search of an image of the needed pin. She compared it with the decorations of ancestors, but found nothing similar. Now she wonders why the man turned specifically to Lair, sadly thinks that her father is also busy, and suddenly notices. The girl greets Princess Fren and apologizes for distracting her. Princess of the elite country, Fren Elite Alicio, turns around and warmly greets her younger sister, Asia. They have not seen each other for so long. Seal cannot understand why the princess came here. Fran says that her sister's father made an agreement with His Majesty, and she herself was just walking. Asia asks what she was doing while walking. The blonde stares into the emptiness before her and touches it with her fingers. She says she was talking to flower fairies. The girl turns and looks at Ozzy and laughs. She finds it so funny how it sounds. Princess Fran looks even more closely and sees little fairies swirling around her interlocutor. Here Asia eavesdrops. The children chatter among themselves and note that Fran is always in her fantasies, supposedly talking to fairies. Complete nonsense. Asia listens carefully and begins to get angry. Then the princess calls her. She asks with curiosity what happened. Asia sincerely apologizes. She hadn't thought about Fran at all. In response, she smiles brightly and says it's true. The girl notices something in the princess's hair. She says she would like to learn something from Fran Sama. She can't wait to find out about this hairpin. Lair at that moment found himself on some street. He is not sure if he came to the right address, but it seems to him that the young man went this way. He was not mistaken. These are really slums. There are so many here that how could he find anything? Here he hears some noise. He sees other boys attacking that boy. One of them shouts why Tenya is behaving like that. Another thunders to stop lying and quickly return the hairpin. They don't understand how Tenya could trust someone with such an expensive thing. The dark-haired boy justifies himself. Supposedly, they just don't know anything, and these words only made his offenders angrier. How dare these kids talk to them like that? One of the boys swings at Shadow. The hero grabs the boy's hand and asks him to stop. The light-haired boy pulls back his hand and asks who Lair is. The dark-haired boy recognizes the hero. The repairman said sternly, Tenya is my friend. If you do anything to him, you will immediately regret it. The children got scared and instantly ran away. The hero sighs, extends his hand to the boy, apologizes to Tenya-kun for appearing so suddenly, introduces himself, and asks what they wanted to achieve. Tenya says they steal to survive, and somehow found out that he has an expensive hairpin, the very one he recently gave for repair. Now everything became clear to the liar. But he didn't see Tenya doing anything bad. The boy agrees and says he still managed to anger the fairies. The hero asks again and recalls the words of those boys. Tenya is sure that the master decided that he is a weirdo after all. Since birth the boy has heard their voices, so it's no wonder everyone thinks he's crazy. His parents died, he was left alone, and it's very hard for him. He starts to get angry and declares that no matter what anyone says, he does not want to part with that hairpin. Liar places his hand on his head and says he believes he is on Tenya-kun's side. The hero explains that he is not scary and not crazy, he was so desperately trying to protect that hairpin, even though it was broken. Tenya is very brave. The boy begins to cry from such words. Then Liar honestly says that he came to find out what that boy knows about that hairpin. Tenya replies that he really did not explain anything properly then, and apologizes for just throwing his things and leaving. Rez believes him, he is ready to tell everything. Tenya tells that a few days ago he met her, the one who, like him, sees fairies, that incredible girl. The boy got lost in memories. Then he noticed how the fairies were swirling around the girl and asked if she sees them too. Then he suggested to Fran to take a walk around the city. There are no adults in the slums, and it is very dangerous there. She could get lost here. Does she agree? The girl nodded and agreed with him. Tenya, a little surprised, asked if it was her first time here. He did not remember seeing her before. Fran replied that she had gotten lost before, but never in this place. She just followed the fairies and ended up here. Tenya was surprised. Could she be just like him? Could she hear them too? The girl said that probably everyone is already looking for her. Tenya was glad and offered to take her to the city and hand her over to the adults. So they did just that. As soon as the heroes entered the city, they heard someone running and shouting, "Where has Princess Fran gone?" These people had anxious voices. Tenya was glad and asked her to walk faster because they were so worried about her, and Fran in response took off the hairpin and handed it to the guide, saying to use it. She sincerely thanked him and called him a sweet and kind man. Embarrassed, Tenya began to justify himself. Did she really consider him cute? For him, it was too much, he could not accept such a gift. Then the girl decided to act differently. She suggested returning the badge when they meet again. After that, Fran left with the knights, and Tenya watched her with his gaze. Now Lyra understood everything. That boy had a pin from that unusual girl, so it turned out they understood each other. He says they see fairies together. The hero asks when the next time will be, but seeing the boy's face, he freezes and looks at him inquisitively. Tenya, with sadness in his voice, says that there will be no next time because Fran is the princess of this kingdom. Lyra is stunned. How can that even be? The boy says he was shocked himself, but since that day he has spoken with her through the fairies and learned a lot of new things. No matter how much he wanted to see her again, it will not happen. Fran was of royal blood, he was just an orphan, and even in the distant future their paths will never cross again. But yesterday he spoke with her again through the fairies. Fran conveyed that once the boy becomes an adult, he will do everything possible and personally fulfill her promise. Tenya, with a spark in her eyes, promises, "I will do everything possible and return what I promised myself." Now everything is clear to Larry, and only one thing remains: what he needs to do. The hero promises to put all his strength into fixing this, but the boy must also strive to become stronger. Only then can the meeting happen, even if it takes many attempts. He is confident that Tenya will be able to convey to her everything he wanted. The boy thanks him joyfully. Lyra is also pleased with such determination, so now the young man will have to give his all to become stronger, right? The next day Isya enters the shop and says that it seems they have gotten involved in something not their business. The hero agrees and notices that Frontson and Tenya-kun look very similar. The girl nodded in response. She will impatiently wait until he finally gains the necessary strength and sees her again. How strange it is, two completely different people who lived almost nearby met thanks to the voice of the fairies. Some incredible meeting, like from a fairy tale, and Lyra agrees with it. Shan now burns with curiosity. She wants to know how Tenya will act in the end, and the hero does too. Lind enters the room and greets the hero. They haven't seen each other for a long time. Lyra begins to say that he just heard some rumors, but they are suddenly interrupted by someone peeking from behind the man's shoulder. He says that Lin Sen told him everything about Lair, but despite years of traveling, this is the first time he has come to such a place. Tanya hands him his sword and asks him to repair it. The pin on his neck shines brightly. He smiles happily, and the heroes smile back in response. Lyra will gladly fulfill the order. At that moment, someone touches the book, and fiercely swears that they will never forgive this repairman. Lair remembers how his father argued with his grandfather, asking why he brought his grandson again, and whether he really intends to teach him the craft, and the grandfather declared that his son would never become a repairman under any circumstances. The grandfather wanted to justify himself before the shots, but the father interrupted him. Work must remain work. He was never with him, and he apparently had no memories of his mother. It seems that for the grandfather, repairs are more important than family. The grandfather looked at the book, spoke about memories. Nothing has changed since then, and added, it was all just a dream of Liar. The boy stood up and asked himself if this was really a dream. He glanced at the note on the table and remembered what day it was. The hero walks to the castle, shyly greets His Majesty, and thanks him for letting him visit. Suddenly Isia interrupts and quietly whispers to Lyri whether he doesn't seem a bit arrogant, and the king starts laughing. He boasts about what a hero he is, just an ordinary repairman, and that boy also starts laughing out of embarrassment. It can't be. The day came when the ruler of the kingdom personally wished to meet him. The king said he had recently heard rumors that a famous repairman had appeared in the kingdom's capital. Lyri thinks that he really has had more clients lately. He is delighted, but did his daughter Fran tell him about him? The king asked the repairman for a small favor and sincerely hoped it would not catch the hero off guard. Lyri quickly asks how he can help. He gave a book and asked him to look at it. The hero asks, what is this? Fran explains that these are the treatises of Saint Leginica. This is the original. Lyri asks if he understood correctly whether it was Saint Leginica herself that the ancient elves worshipped. The king confirms and says that 100 years ago the ancient elves believed in the religion of the country Elta and in Saint Leginica. The signs in the holy scriptures carry true magic. You just say the word fire and it appears. No magical powers are needed for this. The treatises hide incredible power that awakens mighty ancient magic. Oh, faith in this religion has long since faded and drowned in oblivion, and the ancient elven symbols have now become only a ghostly language. The king addresses Lyri by name. The man says he wants him to correct these inscriptions. The hero cannot believe that he is trusted with such an important task. They already tried to fix it a decade ago. He must do it for the sake of protecting the country's cultural heritage and researching ancient magic that hides many secrets. Original works need to be restored from time to time. Lyri tries to refuse. He fears that even after the best restoration, no one will be able to read the ancient Elvish. He is told not to worry, and then someone enters the hall and says, he is already here. This is an elf. He notices that they have not met before, says his name is Talo, and offers to help Lyri himself read the ancient Elvish, and while the hero repairs, he will try to read everything. The king again asks to say whether they can rely on the hero, and when Lyri steps aside, Fran anxiously turns to his father and asks what will happen next. The man asks again what she is talking about. The girl insists that guests should not be deceived. They need to know why the choice fell on Lyr-sama, so what will they do? The king ponders. He asks them to take his wish as a small, selfish request, and in his soul quietly calls them to find out what their grandson really is. Lyra takes up the repair and wonders with amazement. Who would have thought that the treatises of the ancient elves have such power? This could completely replace modern magic, since its theory has long become obsolete. He did not know anyone who seriously engaged in this. Maybe if he manages to fix these mechanisms, they will finally start studying ancient magic. The hero dreams of seeing it in action at least once. Lair exhales deeply. It seems he has completed one part and can even return to his previous appearance. The hero is interrupted by Tylo, the elf who with a smile offers the craftsman some rest, and he gladly agrees rest will not hurt. Tylo asks how the repair is going, and the hero answers, slowly but successfully. The hardest part is working from the inside. You need to adapt. It is terrible, but what can you do? The main thing is not to spoil it, because the elf will not be able to read it. Tilo asks if Lairsen studied this craft somewhere, and the hero asks again, does he mean that he had a teacher? The elf agreed. The repairman is still so young, yet already known for his skill. Maybe he just has talent. Lair replies, it's true, I am really young, and my grandfather taught me everything. Unfortunately, he died when the hero was even younger, and only numerous memories remain of him. Tilo says he understands everything and asks if he can learn anything else, and Lair thinks the question concerns his grandfather. The elf answers that he is simply too curious and wants to know. The hero says that this workshop was left to him by his grandfather. He often came here with his father and watched with interest how his grandfather worked. Tilo suggests that Lair followed in his footsteps, and the repairman confirms this. He wants to gain the same recognition and good reputation. He learned everything he could from his grandfather. He not only learned something very important, but also remembered it for life, the request to always stay close to the client and combine thoughts and feelings during the repair, because this is the most important thing in a repairman's work. The The hero recalls how he patched various things for hours, all sorts of shapes, so dear to their owners, because it is really very hard to help people and at the same time pretend that their feelings do not affect you. Grandfather said it would take time to understand this. The elf listens carefully, and a dark atmosphere thickens around him. Lur, embarrassed, apologizes to him, says he talked too much. Tilo replies that this is not true at all. The hero is a wonderful storyteller, and he sincerely regrets having distracted him. The repairman replies that everything is fine, and adds that, for example, he himself cannot read Elvish script. It's incredible that Tilo understands it, so he calls the elf very smart. For the first time, this guy asks for such a thing. He wants to borrow Tilo's strength. The elf agrees. Lair notices his unusual reaction and asks if he can ask him a few questions about the history of elves and all that. He is very interested in many things. The assistant doesn't mind, but he needs to take care of a few things, so he will step away for a bit. He apologizes for interrupting the work, and they can continue the conversation later. The elf leaves and quietly says that he will catch the hero by surprise. He is very angry and asks why he says that, then adds that his grandson is the worst repairman. Lair returns to work and cannot get rid of the question what happened to the elf. He is very curious about it, and the hero notices that the next page of the treatise is torn out. He thinks aloud that the sheets are white on both sides and there are no signs of tampering. That man assumes that the king did it. The man sighed. A few years ago, they already tried to repair this book, and he did not understand what could have been done to such a valuable thing. Lair says he will do it as soon as possible, although honestly he has no idea how to fix it. He thinks he can fix everything here. The hero noticed a dictionary on the shelf. Maybe there are notes there, but almost nothing about ancient Elvish. He noticed a bookmark and opened the book, and it turned out to be a diary. It is written that something foolish happened that day. The man was asked to repair an old book. He was told that it was not just an ancient book, but a sacred scripture, but no one was allowed to talk about it or spread rumors. It was a royal order. Could he handle it? The size of the repairman. Was it really decided to dump this on him, the one supposedly royal? He is called Lundum Sama and is asked to repair the scripture because he is the best repairman in the whole world. Laird still does not understand what it is, so he will have to read everything. Lund decided that this request was foolish. He was puzzled about what kind of treatise was before him. He needed to repair some old book. The man looked at it again. He sighs heavily when the woman looks into the shop. Lund wonders who else such an early hour could have brought. The girl said she came from the lands of the elves, and her name is Eliza. She knew the master was supposed to repair writings, so she came to help Lunsum. The man was so embarrassed that he could not utter a word, then agreed and giggled convulsively. The girl was surprised by such a reaction and wanted to add something about the repair, but Lund interrupted her. He agreed to this job and would manage on his own. Eliza could not understand what was happening. The man replied that for a repairman it would be a disgrace to accept help from someone else. The girl asked again about this disgrace. Lant continued. Everyone in this kingdom knows him, but not in the whole world. The elf asked if he could fix memories. The man did not understand what she was talking about. Alira whispered that these writings had been used by ancient elves for hundreds of years. Moreover, there is the teaching of Saint Luzhnik, whom her ancestors believed in. His existence, culture, history, and thoughts, all of this is described in the writings. For the elves, whose race is threatened with extinction, the only book left from their ancestors is their hope and support for the future. These writings are quite difficult to understand, if only they could read in the language of the ancient elves. Lund listened to this silently. He burst out laughing and said there was nothing simpler. He understood correctly. They just want to return to a normal life. Later the man recalled those words about memories. How could he fix someone's feelings? He was just a repairman. He did not care what was said there. All he could do was return the thing to its original state. In fact, this is a royal request. If he can do it, he will become the royal repairman, and if nothing works out. Lund got angry and hit the treatise with his fist. The treatise flared up and its pages scattered. At that moment, Eliza entered the room and dropped the cup in horror. The man instantly ran to her, tried to calm her down, and promised to fix everything. He was the royal repairman. The ancient letters began to evaporate from the page. This upset the girl even more and frightened Lunda. The man did not understand her reaction. The elf girl started crying. She said it seemed to be refusing, and she believed it was the only thing in the whole world that meant so much to her. The repairman realized she was not lying when she said this book was important to her. It was the first time he had seen such a reaction from an elf girl, and Lend bitterly regretted and could not understand how he could have done such a thing. Lair suddenly realizes that the missing detail in the writing turns out to be extremely important and wonders how he could have been so foolish. He returns to the old man. The hero says he must fix it. He cannot allow the story of this book to end in tragedy. He asks the old man to trust him. Eliza showed Tylokun the treatise. She said this book contains information about how to make many people happy using magic. The little elf then asked her if it was about the magic of happiness. He confirmed it and said it was a very ancient spell, and long ago, thanks to this magic, many peach blossoms bloomed on that tree. But hearts are multifaceted. People and terrible creatures started a war, trying in this way to obtain the same happiness. The girl finished the story. After a very famous master took on the repair, the book returned to the king. Tylo-kun suggested that his sister Eliza go to the king and bring smiles back to everyone. The elf girl said that if that master really restores the book, her brother will again see flowers bloom on that tree, so she asks Tylo-kun to just wait a little. The next memory, my sister is crying, clutching the book and begging for forgiveness, saying it is all her fault. She screams that she is sorry, begs to be forgiven again and again, until she loses consciousness. After that, Tylo wakes up. He clenches his fists in anger and says that people age and die too quickly, but sins never disappear. Lair enters the room and says he wants to see what Tylo is capable of. The hero says he knows everything about the writings and his grandfather. Tylo does not believe him, his blood flows in him, so the repairman says he repairs human memories, and he should not laugh. Lair listens to him silently. The elf continues he believes that all this will repeat again and again. As with Eliza-san, now the hero understood everything. Finally, he realized where that strange anxiety during their first meeting came from. Tylo knew everything, and that is why he is here. Blair asks if Tylo came here because of the sin his grandfather committed. The elf falls silent for a moment. He confirms it. The elf appeared in this kingdom as soon as he learned where the scroll was hidden. He came to take revenge, but the one he needed is long dead. But Tylo is not calm at all. This sin still wanders the world. He asks what the hero thinks about what is happening to his grandfather now, and Lyra remains silent at this time. Tylo says that since that day her life has changed greatly. She felt responsibility and guilt for what happened with the writing off, and a depressing feeling settled in her heart. He never saw her smile again. It was the hero's grandfather who broke her no, the one who destroyed the dreams of all elves. Lair understands that it is all because of his grandfather. He is sure that the grandfather regretted what happened. Anyone would think so. The hero wants to say something to Tylo, but there is no time. The elf shouted that Lair is just like him. He only cares about his own name and spits on everyone else. He never even intended to fix what was so dear to someone. The hero could never have done that. Lyre also stops him with a scream. He says that the grandfather really did something bad no matter how much he and others regret it. It will not help Eliza-san and everyone else. Lair bows his head and apologizes. Although he does not think the elf will be able to forgive him, apologies will not turn back time. Tylo listens in shock and remains silent. The hero's grandfather made a mistake. He is going to fix his error. Lair says that because of this, he now wants to take responsibility. The grandfather never fixed what he was supposed to, but the master came across notes with hints on how to do it in the diary. He wants to fix everything because he himself must do it. Tylo trembles and asks what the hero is doing now. Tylo shouts that the writings of the ancient elves have been erased from the face of the earth. No matter how you look, there is nothing to be done. Even if the hero apologizes 1,000,000 times, what is the point of these words? Lair explained why he asked the elf to use his power. The key is hidden on the last page. If they understand it, they will understand the entire text, but for this he needs the elf's help, and Tylo became even angrier. The hero says that the grandfather was very wrong, but he decided to correct all mistakes, get to the truth, and put everything in its place to fulfill the elves' dreams and return hope to them, therefore. That is why he would like Tylo to continue living only in the past. The elf squeezes the treatise and begins to sob. He wipes away tears and says that he understood the hero and is ready to believe him only once. The next day, Isia asks if the hero really decided to give the scrolls to the elf. She sighs deeply. Lair, as always, is in his usual manner, and the hero replies that there is one problem he does not know how to solve. He does not know how to tell the king everything. The girl agrees to go with him. They will come up with a plan and tell the king everything. The main thing is that such an important thing for the elves will be in a safe place. Isia sincerely hopes that the king will understand them. The hero literally lit up with happiness and thanks the girl. She has done so much for him. Now she wonders what kind of magic of happiness it was. Lair laughs foolishly and says, "Who knows?" Isia grabs him by the cheeks and asks him not to make such a face, asking at the same time, why were they not explained anything at all? At that moment, the hero screams in pain. He rubs his cheeks and tries to understand what the reason is here. At that moment, Tylo runs into the house and knocks on the door. Eliza asks who he is, and the elf, introducing himself, quietly says that they have not seen each other for a long time, asks her to look at him through the window and adds that, if possible, he has something important she can just look. He begins to read the letter. It says that trusting someone is a real miracle. Trust is probably the only way living beings can communicate. Tylo slips the letter under the door, and Eliza immediately understands. It was written by Laundesan. Back then he was foolish, inexperienced, and too confident let her know that he regrets what happened. He regretted it until old age and will take these feelings with him to the grave. They will remain in his heart forever. Lund approached her, but she was afraid of people. No matter how hard he tried, their meeting never happened. If only he could do something, he would do everything to correct the mistakes of the past. He cannot stop thinking about it. But it is impossible. The only thing left for them is to move forward. There is no way back anymore. So he wants to fix one thing. Only a skilled master can repair that writing. Fortunately, he has a wonderful son. Someday he will trust him and together they will get to work. And one day he asks her to show the world her beautiful smile, like wonderful flowers. The body at that time reads the sacred writings, and Eliza sees through the window in surprise how flowers have bloomed on the tree. She begins to smile through tears, sighs, and says that she feels very warm. The hero also looks at the peach flowers. The man got so angry that he started shouting at the client, "If you don't like your job, go and look for another one." The client was outraged by the master's rudeness and accused him of not being able to properly accept criticism at his age. When the client left, a girl approached Luzin. Indifference was on her face, but inside she was consumed by anxiety. Will the old clients return to them after such a scandal? The man looked at her and asked her to be silent. He noted that he asked for nothing. Luzin asked how she was feeling. Luna touched her hand, felt it, and replied that she had not yet fully recovered. Hearing the answer, the man tiredly rubbed his head, got up from the table on which scattered notes and books lay, and Luna asked if he needed anything. Luzin still held his head. He replied that he needed nothing, let the girl rest, especially since her health was far from the best. Luna looked intently at the owner who was leaving the office, and on the table next to the bottles lay someone's pendant and a photo frame turned face down. Light was diligently cleaning the workshop, carefully wiping the workplace and humming to himself. As soon as he heard someone approaching, he immediately went out to meet the clients. Luzin and Luna stood before him. The man began to grumble he hoped for a decent place, but it turned out to be just a cheap diner, and the girl apologized to the owner of the establishment for disturbing him. The client was dissatisfied, but Lore still asked how he could help. Luzin sighed and muttered that since they came, they could at least say something, because it looked strange, and such incomprehensible, ambiguous behavior of people confused the master. He could not understand why they came at all. Luzin sat on the sofa, and Luna remained standing behind him. She apologized and introduced her master. He was also a repairman, and the girl was his assistant. Upon hearing that the client was his colleague, Lair asked, and they turned to him. Luzin paused for a moment, then said it was about his assistant Luna. He wanted to ask Lair to fix her, but the young repairman was only confused. He did not understand how and why to repair a living girl. Lozano explained that Lana had a built-in special mechanism that needed to be fixed. Laird immediately admitted that it was the first time he had encountered such a task. The man sighed and said that it was his personal development. The repairman thoughtfully approached the girl and touched her hand, asking if he could take a look. Mamaluna did not mind, but Luzin did not. The man jumped up and slapped the young man's hand. He grabbed him by the clothes and shouted for him not to touch her anymore. Lar was confused by such sharpness. He wanted to ask how he would work with the girl and the mechanism if he was forbidden to touch the moon. The man let go of the boy and ordered him to be silent. He did not care how, but the repairman had to solve their problem. Lazin warned the boy, if he failed, that man would make it so that he would never be able to walk again. Tyr was the first client who dared to threaten him like that. He stood motionless. The girl apologized for her master's behavior. He was very sorry. She bowed her head and admitted that Luzin behaved very disrespectfully towards the young repairman. The man looked hopefully at Lair. He asked if he would take the job, and although Luzin behaved rudely, the boy still accepted the order and promised to do everything. It was late at night. Luna's case lay on the office table, and in front of her on his knees sat Lair and looked at her feet. The boy was amazed by such an amazing work of his senior colleague. She was so detailed that anyone would take the girl for a living person, and the young repairman was also interested in whether she had a nervous system. He realized that even one mistake and the moon could stop. Lair looked intently at the girl and said that he still could not believe what he had seen. The girl did not understand such curiosity about herself and asked if something was bothering the repairman. Laird asked her if Luzin had created her. The girl confirmed. She explained that she did not remember it. When Luna opened her eyes, only the owner was nearby. The boy asked if that man also did the maintenance himself. The girl said that her owner tried to add new functions to her every time during repairs. Thanks to careful, attentive care, Luna could still move. Looking at her, Laird realized his colleague from Solitude could create a mechanical girl. She looked just like an ordinary person. He did not understand why that man had created her. The girl smiled grimly and said that Luzin was a very kind person. Luna said this so suddenly that Lyre did not understand what she meant. The girl admitted that for the owner she was just an assistant. If she broke, he would easily make a new one, but every time something broke, the man desperately tried to fix her. Then Lur realized that before him stood a unique and perfect copy of the appearance of a living girl. As a repairman and a professional, he saw a sophisticated mechanism that his colleague repeatedly repaired on his own. But the boy could not understand why Luzine asked someone else to fix the moon. The girl asked why the master suddenly fell silent. She asked if everything was all right. The boy said he wanted to ask her something. After talking with the girl, Lair went to the senior colleague's workshop. Just as he was about to enter, a frightened client ran out to him, and Luzine shouted after him not to come to him for help anymore. The man complained about the repair, and the repairman began throwing bottles toward the door. When Luzine saw Lyre, he calmed down. He offered the young man to sit wherever he felt comfortable. As soon as the boy entered the workshop, a sharp smell of fumes hit his nose. He had to cover his nose with his hand. The man said he came without Luna. Supposedly, he had not yet brought her to order. The hero replied that he came precisely because of his assistant and asked why Luzine left this girl with him. Luzine immediately said that even if he explained everything to the boy, he would still ask a lot of questions. The man asked if he came to listen to a story or just to complain, and the boy replied that the whole situation seemed strange to him. Luzine did not understand what he meant. Lair explained that, unlike him, the Lord of the Moon could invent advanced technologies. The young repairman saw in that man an inventor who was closest to creating a human. Laird admitted that he himself did not believe. It was impossible to create a human from mechanisms or with the help of alchemy, and Luzine clearly had the talent and skills of a true master, so the young man could not understand why such a person turned to him for repairs. The man said discontentedly that instead of asking such nonsense, the boy could have continued working silently. Lear did not expect such an answer at all. The old repairman himself could not understand whether his vision had sharply worsened from cheap alcohol or from old age, and due to his health condition, he could no longer work properly and fulfill orders. Luzine fell silent for a moment and sighed heavily. Now Lear saw the whole picture. The man said he could no longer help Lunin with anything, which is why he asked the boy to take on the repair. Luzine added that, among other things, he was already old and would soon leave this world. He created someone who would not disappear and would live even after his death, so the man no longer worried that he would leave nothing behind. All his work was the fruit of his dissatisfaction. Fearing to misunderstand the client, Lair asked why Luzine created the girl. The man sighed again. He considered this conversation pointless. The old repairman said he had a daughter. Every time he returned from work, his little daughter was already nearby to greet him. Luzine asked how she felt and apologized for not being able to take her with him, and the girl simply rejoiced to see her father and replied that everything was fine thanks to the medicine Luzine had found for her. Little Lena sat on the bed and sincerely thanked her father for working so hard for her. She was sincere with Luzine and loved him very much, saying that although her mother was not nearby, she was glad to have such a caring father. While finishing her dinner, Lena sincerely promised that after recovering she would work hard so that Luzine would find it easier to take care of her, and she was confident that they would always be together. The man thanked his caring daughter. After another working day, which delayed Luzine a little, he returned home with a shopping bag. He apologized for being late and promised to cook dinner for them. The repairman said that today he took an order from a wealthy nobleman, so he could earn well. Luzine dreamed of spending the money on good medicine for his daughter so that she would recover faster. He was so happy that he did not immediately notice that Lena was silent. The man approached the girl's bed and saw that she was lying quietly, not moving. Luzine froze, called Lena, taking off his coat. Thinking that his daughter had fallen asleep, he approached to wake her. He wanted Lena to eat her favorite stew. Luzine asked her to get up and threatened that he would eat everything himself. He lifted her. The girl's body did not respond at all. The man asked if she could hear him. The old repairman instantly understood what had happened. His body trembled with sorrow, grief, and fear. The father held his daughter's body and asked her for answers. He cried in the quiet room. His light went out. Lair understood that after the tragedy, Luzine decided to create Lena. That man was indifferent to the boy's opinion. He called himself a powerful fanatic who sought to get rid of loneliness, so he created a doll resembling his daughter. That was the whole story. The young master had no idea that his client had such a past. Recalling how he took Luna by the hand, and Lawson got angry and grabbed him, the boy did not suspect that he was simply trying to distract himself from loneliness with his creation. Luzine mumbled that they were already wasting time on chatter, wanted to suggest to Lair to return to the workshop, but he was interrupted by a young man who asked to tell more. The boy realized that he was now responsible for the moon and wanted to fix it as soon as possible, but for this, the young repairman refused to look at the blueprints from which it was made. If Luzine still had them, Lair could have done the repair faster and better. The hero bowed and asked again. Luzin was frankly surprised by the youth's sincerity. But still, he did not fully trust him. The old repairman thought that Laird also wanted to learn the secret of creating the moon and said that the young man would not succeed, because only Luzin knew how to create this mechanism. The man sighed and said there were no drawing saw, the instructions were in his head. He added that even if he wanted to teach Lair, it would take months. Vasin believed that before the young repairman fixed Luna, he would already be dead. But the hero did not agree. He said that if Luzin himself expects such an end, then that man will save neither Lena, nor his daughter, nor anyone at all. As soon as Lair learned his story and saw the girl, he immediately understood that Lena was like a daughter to Luzin. The boy believed that parents' desire to be with their child was not funny, so he was not going to laugh. Luzin did not expect such pressure from the young man. Laird warned that if he started to hesitate, he would regret it, and the old master, having already lost someone dear, understood everything. Luzin shouted that he already knew this, admitted that now he could trust the young lord, and turning away, the man muttered that Lear was just an ordinary guy. He scratched the back of his head and added that the boy was too stubborn to be a simple, unremarkable repairman in a cheap diner. Lyra took this as a good sign. When the master finished the work, he asked Luna how she felt. The girl waved her hand and said she saw no problems, adding that Lyra was an incredible professional. The boy did not think so. He pulled out the drawings and said that it was thanks to them that everything worked out. During the repair, Lee suddenly realized how complicated the structure of the moon was, but if you decipher its logic, it could be completely fixed. The boy told the girl that her father was an amazing person. Luna thought it over and agreed. Her master could really be called incredible. The boy noticed that the girl had become noticeably sadder. He asked what was the matter. Luna turned to him and asked if they could talk a little alone. The young man did not mind listening to her. Luna saw that her owner was a good man, clumsy, weak, and capricious, but it was funny and touching for her to observe how carefully he treated her, and the girl understood that she had become a substitute for his daughter who died of illness. So every time her body made a mistake, the man did everything he could to fix it. Lair listened to her attentively. Wuzin, like a father, could not save his sick daughter, and after her death, he did not want the same to happen a second time, this time with his creation Luna. Seeing how emotionally the owner worried and tenderly loved his daughter, the girl increasingly wondered if she felt something for Lazine, but her thoughts led her into a dead end. Luna was just a mechanical doll. She could not have a heart, so she did not know how to express feelings, but Lyra created another, and there was no doubt, that girl had a heart. Luna asked the young repairman what she should do. He smiled and said everything was fine, but the girl did not understand, so the boy decided to help her convey her true feelings to Luzin. Meanwhile, the tired man dragged himself heavily through the city streets. His exhausted legs caught the eye. Passers-by turned and asked if he was okay, but the old master just walked by. Luzin quietly laughed to himself. He knew that sometimes his behavior was incredibly difficult for others. He himself believed that this led to his defeats, and the master saw he was a stubborn man. He remembered his beloved, who could love such a stubborn person as he was. Luzin considered himself truly lucky when his daughter was born, and even if both parents passed away, their memory of the daughter would live on. At first, Luzin really created the moon to fill that emptiness in his heart after little Lena's death. But over time, the man learned to love the doll, who neither laughed nor cried like his daughter. He grew attached to his mechanism. Luzin knew that he behaved roughly and hot-temperedly with Luna, but she still continued to call him master and stay close. The man regretted how he acted. He called his behavior pathetic. Luzin knew that Lair was right, but he also understood himself. He was stubborn and found it hard to give up his decisions. Luzin feared that as soon as someone appeared who could fix Luna, she would leave that man and simply go to the new master. Luzin himself laughed, imagining this, but at the same time did not want to remain a fool for life. Luna was too much like Lena. At least let this doll live freely and breathe deeply. The tired man could no longer hold back his emotions and covered his face with his palm. At that moment, Luna and Lane were going to Luzin's workshop. On the way, they came across a man sitting by the wall of a house and crying. Seeing the girl, he tried to get up but failed. The assistant ran up to him and asked if everything was all right. She sat next to him and hugged the man's trembling shoulders. Luzin did not answer her. Not hearing a response, the girl was silent for a few minutes, then repeated her question. This time she addressed the unfortunate man as if to a father. Sobbing, Luzin raised his eyes to Luna, and his weak eyes saw before him little Lena healthy, eating. It was his memory of the past. The man did not stop crying. He was so upset hearing these words that he hugged Luna and thanked her, while Lur watched them, smiling. The girl froze and tears flowed down her artificial cheeks. She tightly hugged her caring and kind owner, and a smile appeared on her face. The repair of the moon was finally completed. Leia returned to his workshop, where he met Asya. She brewed tea for them. Entering the room where her acquaintance was sitting at the table, she asked him if he would tell her what was happening, but the young man did not understand what exactly she wanted to hear. The girl reminded that not long ago the guy started hiring people for work, and Lyra replied that he had no choice. Luna's former employer closed the shop, so he advised hiring her. Lurd was surprised why Asia brought up that topic again. They had already discussed it. Then the girl very seriously began to interrogate the guy about the new employee. Whether he knows how to brew tea, and if he has any work experience at all. The young man sincerely reassured his friend, Luna is not bad, she is very hardworking, so there will be no problems from her. Asia froze. She looked sternly at Lair. Her Majesty did not know earlier that a girl would come to them. Laird asked why Asia suddenly became so angry, and the girl shouted that she herself did not know the answer. The guy became even more confused and stopped understanding her, but he was sure that he and Luna would get along. At that moment they noticed that someone had entered. Luna apologized and said that from today she would help Mr. Lair with his affairs. The girl introduced herself and added that she was glad to work in their team. Somewhere on the middle level of the dungeon, the guy was fighting a monster. Their clash had lasted for some time. He was gasping for breath but tightly gripped his sword. The monster moved toward him. The warrior rushed forward and killed the enemy. But behind the stones, another monster was hiding. The guy did not have time to prepare for the attack, but his comrade managed to protect him. He looked at Tenya and told him not to relax. The guy thanked Lin for the help, but he was silent. Tenya called his comrade by name, asked if he was not wounded, and noticed his strange behavior. The guy turned around and smiled, saying that he was fine, added that he was invited again to the Duke's house. Lend assumed that Lady Asha was being capricious again. He sighed and noticed that there were always a lot of problems with that girl. Xia conveyed Lyra Lin's words. She still has a long way ahead because the gentleman is still growing, so patience is needed. The girl did not like it at all. She grumbled that although Lind looked like a gentleman, he criticized people behind their backs, and Lair said that it was like in a family, and there was nothing wrong with that. The girl wondered what kind of relationship she had with Lind. She asked her friend if his parents lived in the capital. Xia wanted to meet them. Hearing the question about family, Lair froze. He did not know how to explain it to her, and just as he began to speak, someone knocked on their door. It was Tenya. He quietly entered and greeted them. Asha was surprised that he came alone, as he rarely came to the repair workshop by himself, and the girl asked if Lind was not with him. When the name of his comrade was mentioned, Tenya paused for a moment and did not answer immediately, and the guys noticed this and asked what had happened. When they settled in one of the rooms, Asha asked Tenya if something was wrong with Lind. She had seen him yesterday, and it did not seem to her that her friend was in trouble. Tenya could have dismissed it as his own imagination, but it seemed to him that his comrade was unwell or suffering from something. Lind was always thinking about something. The young man decided to ask the comrades, whom Lan had known for a long time, and found out that the strange behavior of that man could have been caused by a simple siesta. Xia and Lair heard this name for the first time and looked at Tenya in surprise, and the guy said that Siesta was Lin's fiancé. The guys jumped up and asked Tenya again. They did not know that their friend had a fiancé. One of them was stunned that Xia did not know about it, and she replied that Ani was not there. She was talking to some man and was hearing about it herself for the first time. Tenya was seized by curiosity whether something had happened between Lindum and Siesta, so he decided to ask the man why he was so gloomy, but he remained silent. Lair thoughtfully said that this was even more troubling. Tenya admitted that he was worried about his comrade, but at the same time understood that he could not interfere in his personal affairs. Perhaps the young man really behaved too selfishly and arrogantly, but Lind raised him as an adventurer when Tenya was an orphan. He believed he owed that man and wanted to repay him, and also wanted to understand how he could help Lind in this situation. Lair told Tenya that he himself also owed Lind. Isiad decisively decided to help. She could not leave her friend in such a state. They asked the boy to rely on them. As soon as Tenya left, the guys rushed to the area where Lind lived. Lyra admiringly admired the large and beautiful houses. Isiad did not pay any attention to them at all. She asked the boy what he thought about Lind. They had known each other for a long time, and the girl was worried because her friend had not said a word about his fiancé. Lind's group was one of the best, and Isiad met him when her mother hired her for accompaniment. He was like an older brother to her, and she was tormented by the fact that even yesterday, when they saw each other, she did not notice that something was bothering him. Lyra quietly assured Isiad that he loved her and asked her not to worry about him anymore. The girl felt that there might be truth in this. The guys entered the yard of one of the houses. There they were met by a woman. She greeted Aya. The girl was glad to see her aunt healthy. The woman warned that Lind was not at home, and besides, the aunt herself was about to go to work. Isiad apologized for coming at an inconvenient time, asked if she could wait inside, and the aunt did not object. She led them to the guest room, where a girl was already standing. It was Siesta. the woman greeted her, and Lair could not believe that they would meet his fiancée so soon. The girl apologized for not being able to meet the guests personally, assured that the guys could confidently turn to her, introduced herself as Siesta Brando, and sat in a special chair. She did not have one leg. Isia and Lyra sat on the sofa. Siesta moved to a chair nearby. She apologized for catching the guests so suddenly, and Isia said it was their fault because they came unexpectedly. Siesta smiled and reassured the gentleman and Lady Isia. Do not worry about my body. I have been in this condition for 5 years and have long gotten used to it. Siesta added that Lind constantly talked about Lord Asu. She called that girl a lady, to whom her fiancé owed a debt for many years, and the young man a skilled master. Lair awkwardly said that he would not call himself that. Moreover, he considered himself deeply obliged to Lind. The girl asked him not to be modest. Siesta recalled that the guests came to an unplanned meeting with Lind and asked what brought them here. Ashia said that she knew Lind had been acting strangely lately, and added that she and Lair, as friends, want to help him, so they came without warning. Hearing this, Siesta was a little upset and admitted that, although they had lived together for so many years, she had never noticed his mood changing. The girl raised her head and said that Lind was most likely gloomy because of her. Isia could not understand how the sweet Siesta could have such an effect on such a man. The girl said that at first she and Lin were in the same group. He was a famous adventurer whom she admired, and one day she managed to get into the same group next to him. At first, Siesta and Lind were rivals. They often quarreled, but despite different views, they sincerely respected each other. Over time, their relationship warmed. One day, Siesta approached Lind and happily said that if their group completed tomorrow's mission, they would receive rank SSS, such success their team had never seen before, and Lind added that it all happened thanks to the girl. Seeing Lind's smile, Siesta blushed. Their friend approached them, smiled, and remarked that the guys were flirting with each other again, jokingly suggesting to play a wedding, to which the girl shouted at him, "Shut up." The guy continued to mock Siesta. He asked the guys not to arrange their matchmaking games during the quest. The girl shouted that they had never done anything like that. Lind continued drinking tea. In the evening, Siesta and Lind met on the street. The man apologized for the late call, but the girl did not care. She asked what Lind wanted to talk to her about and whether he intended to discuss the strategy for tomorrow, but the man instead began with a reminder. They had known each other for 2 years. They grew up side by side both as people and as adventurers. Lind without any doubt knew that he was sincerely glad that they met. Siesta asked why he suddenly started talking about it, and Lind blushed and apologized. He was stubborn in his insecurity and always got confused in front of the girl he loved. The man confessed that he was afraid of losing her one day. The girl still did not understand what he was talking about, and then Lind turned to her and quietly said that he did not want to lose her. He knelt on one knee and whispered that he wanted to be with her forever. She was his most precious treasure. Lind confessed that he wanted to protect Siesta until death parted them. The man put a ring on the girl's finger. Still holding her hand, Lind asked if he could hear the answer to his proposal. The girl cried with happiness and agreed. The next day the adventurers set off on a journey. Siesta rushed ahead, and the companions shouted after her not to do it, but the girl, although unaware, did not listen. As Siesta ran, her gaze stopped on the ring on her finger. Yes, she was really getting married, and this day was also decisive for the group. If they passed this class, their level would increase. Lost in thought, the girl did not notice the danger. The monster came too close. The companions shouted at her to be careful, but it was already too late. A giant paw struck Siesta directly. She woke up in her room. Her body was bandaged, and Lind was sleeping next to her bed. The girl immediately remembered that monsters attacked her in the dungeon, and when she tried to get up, she did not feel her left arm. The girl threw off the blanket and froze. She was gripped by horror. Feeling movement, Lind woke up. He was glad that his fiancée finally woke up. Siesta clung to the places where her left arm and leg once were, continuously asked where her limbs were, and screamed. Lind tried to calm her down. Siesta, realizing her situation, quietly cried, and the man hugged her. Not far from them lay a broken wedding ring. Isia and Lair left the house. The young master could not find words to express what he felt after Siesta's story. He and Lind had a difficult past. At that very moment, they ran into Lind himself. The guys sincerely told him how they met his fiancée, said that Tenya noticed his gloomy mood, and promised to find out what was going on. The guys apologized for interfering in personal matters, but the man stopped them. He thought that he was the one who made everyone worry. The young master named Lind said that Siesta gave him a broken ring. Seeing it, he admitted that he considered himself worthless in those days. He could do nothing for his beloved, and when the tragedy happened, Lind could not protect her. The man did not understand at all what he could do for her. He really wanted to find out what could make Siesta's life better, but in the end, he could not make a decision. It seemed to him as if he was forcing her to stay close. Lind said that Siesta's birthday was soon and believed that she did not need such a worthless man as he was. Lair was outraged and objected that this was not like Lind at all. The guy asked if he really thought that this was the best option for Siesta. Leary thought that Lind was just looking for a way to please his ego. The master realized that as an outsider he had no right to speak like that, but he could not stay aside. Lair asked what Lind really wanted from Siesta: forgiveness, atonement, or something else. The man was left speechless. At that moment, Asiya sharply asked why men hesitate so much in such moments. She reminded him that these were his friends, and in difficult situations, he could consult with them. The girl pointed her finger at Lyre and told Blen that he was the one who could fix anything. Asiya looked at her friend and winked. Lair came to Luzin for advice on how to make prosthetic arms and legs, explained that he wanted the girl to be able to move freely, and asked if that man could tell him how to create such prostheses. Lurd knew that he would handle the ring repair without problems, but the most important thing was to return the body that Siesta had lost. Luzin sighed. Just before the young man arrived, he was already about to close the shop. The young gentleman apologized for the inconvenience, but he simply had no choice. Luzin was the only one Lair could rely on. After thinking a little, the man asked if the boy really wanted to save Siesta. The boy looked at him seriously and said he wanted to do it. Luzin had no reason to refuse him help, but he had questions for Lair. Asked if the boy thought this might cause problems, because you always have to consider another person's feelings. Luzin strictly warned the boy, even if you sincerely want to help and do not intend to harm, people by nature do not say aloud what they want. The man wanted the boy to remember this. He admitted, even for free, he would not have needed such help, but a good person can suffer in solitude. After talking with the senior colleague, Lair pondered. He had already been in the workshop sorting materials. That man told Asia that in any case they now needed to draft sketches of the prosthetic arm and leg, but he himself doubted it, and the girl immediately understood Luzin's words worried her friend. Lair confirmed this. It may be a matter of spiritual strength, and he realized that their hearts cannot be healed. Although the body may return to normal, the soul may remain wounded. The young gentleman pondered what else he could do for his friends. Seeing how Lyra was worried, Asha confessed that when she was near him, she constantly remembered her mother. When he sewed dresses for her, the girl was able to convey her sincere feelings to her beloved. She finally lived, looking into the future without regret in her soul. Siya approached Lair and said that this was exactly why she was sure he could help Siesta and Linda, adding that the young man should not take everything upon himself, because she doubted whether he truly understood a woman's heart. Grabbing the materials, Asiya asked them to quickly go to their house. When the boys arrived, no one met them. It was strange. Suddenly, they heard noise behind the door and quickly went inside. They were rushing down the corridor and heard Siesta shouting, "Lind, let me go." That man was not going to let her go. The girl screamed, "Stop." She did not want to continue this conversation any longer. Lair approached them and asked what was happening, requesting everyone to calm down. Lind did not expect to see his friend during their fight with Siesta. Suddenly, the room was filled with her sobbing. The girl was sitting on a chair, hiding her face in her hands, while Asiya and Lair looked at her anxiously. Lind explained that he told the girl about his plans to fix the ring, and she suddenly started screaming and swearing. Asiya sat next to Siesta and asked Lyre to leave the room together with Lind so they could stay alone, looking her straight in the eyes and asking him to take away the girl who was hostile towards her. When Siesta calmed down and stopped crying, she apologized that the hostess witnessed their quarrel. Asiya waved her hand, "Don't worry," and the girl admitted that near Lind her thoughts do not quiet down and she cannot control them. Siesta was afraid that with such a body she would never be able to have children, and her fiancé loved them so much, so it seemed to her as if she was stealing his dream. Asiya listened to her attentively and silently. Siesta continued talking about her feelings she shone with happiness when they were together in the adventurers group, and the girl recalled how good it was when they were first comrades and then lovers. It was a wonderful time. Siesta loved him so much that it was impossible to find anyone who loved him more, but now the girl did not want to remain a burden that would only drag Lind down. Siesta wanted to continue her story, but Azia interrupted her. Suddenly she hugged the girl and did not let her finish. Azia said that Siesta was mistaken. She knew from the video that the girl said those words only for the sake of her lover. The lady asked Siesta what she thought Lind himself felt about this. Asha inquired whether the girl really wanted them to break up. Siesta could not hold back tears. She admitted that if Lind felt sadness, then she would too. Siak calmed the girl. "Don't be afraid," she said, and told her that when her mother was still alive, she managed to tell her something. Her mother was also ill, and after the wedding asked Asia's father if he was happy, and then Asia turned to Siesta. "What do you think?" her father answered. The man replied to his wife that as long as he was with her, he needed nothing more. Only with this woman did the whole world shine for him. While they were together, I feared nothing, because together they would overcome any obstacle. Siesta listened to Asia. It was as if her eyes had opened. The lady believed that girls should be more sincere in their feelings before their beloved. Asia smiled warmly at her. After some time, Lair and Lind returned to the room. The man approached the girl and knelt down, saying that for his happiness he needed only her. Lind apologized for making her wait so long in doubt. He regretted and admitted that the greatest happiness for him was to be beside her. Lind gently took Siesta's hand. He asked her if she would live with him until the end of his life, and the girl squeezed his hand and said yes. A few days passed. Isia was in an elegant dress. She told Lyre that she was starting to get nervous. The boy smiled and asked her what she would do if she was paralyzed by nerves. The girl replied that she could cope on such a special day. She reminded him the young man himself had not slept for several days. Lyre muttered that he had been exposed after all. Isia said it was obvious he was working on an important project. The most important thing for them was that the young master had coped with everything and did not feel bad. Lair sincerely thanked the girl for everything and added that without her, he would not have managed such a difficult and large order. The girl blushed from such surprise. At that moment, Tenure announced that the celebration was starting, and Lair, along with the other guests, clapped his hands. Looking at the happy newlyweds, he believed that even if it would be difficult, the young man was confident they would cope and go through all difficulties together. Lind extended his hand to the bride. Siesta accepted it, and now she was truly happy and healthy. When another client came to Lair, the young man asked to wait a little and apologized. The man did not object and even said that the boy's workshop was better than in the capital. The hero did not expect such a compliment and laughed awkwardly, and Lunar approached the gentleman and asked to leave the clients with her while he worked in the workshop. Having wrapped the sword in the cloth, the young man sincerely thanked the girl, said that she would help him a lot, and returned to his office where he resumed work. A month passed after the wedding of Linda and Siesta. The number of clients noticeably increased, and now the hero had some work almost every day. Despite the large number of orders and popularity, he felt that he had room to grow and promised himself to give all his strength to become a true professional in his field. While Lair was immersed in work, a boy ran into his workshop. Without knocking or warning, he entered and asked the boy if he was the owner of the workshop. The hero turned around and nodded. The boy introduced himself. His name was Cornet. Saying nothing more, he asked Blair to take him as an apprentice. It was clear he was determined and serious. The young owner invited the boy to sit and served him a cup of tea. Corn sat tensely on the sofa. It seemed that he intended to leave the workshop only as Lair's apprentice. The boy asked the unexpected guest why he wanted to become an apprentice. Cornet replied that he needed to fix something. Lair suggested simply giving him the item so he could do everything himself. He could not understand why the boy had to embark on such a long journey as a repairman's apprentice to fix something. Corn shouted that he had to fix it himself. The boy bowed, was not going to back down at all, and was even more glad that he could ask Lair to make him his apprentice. The young master glanced at him and noticed that Corn's fists were tightly clenched. This spoke of the boy's confidence in his decision. Lair agreed. But he immediately admitted that he did not know if he could teach the boy this craft. The boy asked if Corn could help him with some work now. The boy did not care. He immediately got to work. When Corn sat at the desk in the office, Asia and Lair peeked at him through the door. The young man asked the girl not to offend him. The girl noticed that his young apprentice was full of enthusiasm. Laird agreed with her, and Cornet immediately immersed himself in work. Although he was not brilliant with his hands, from the first day he worked tirelessly, and the master believed that his new apprentice would quickly grasp the basics. The girl asked if Lair was really sure about this, and reminded him that her friend never intended to take on students. The boy agreed with her, but Corn reminded him of himself. He admitted this to Asia, and it was clear that the boy was serious. Seeing and feeling all the enthusiasm of Cornet, Lair wanted to believe the newly accepted student, who at that moment was sitting at the table and working intently. Sia smiled. She accepted her friend's choice. Later, the girl decided to approach Corn and offer to have tea during the break. The boy did not respond to her. Not receiving an answer, Sia asked if he could hear her, but Corn continued to ignore the girl. When she repeated the question, the boy found it intrusive, got irritated, and rudely asked her to be quiet. Oja and Lair froze at Corn's unexpected reaction. The boy casually led the girl to himself, hinting that she should leave, asked who she was, and coolly asked her not to speak to him anymore. Corn told Asia directly that she annoyed him, added that she interfered with his studies, and once again asked her never to speak to him again, and Asia silently left the room. Asia was boiling with indignation at such unexpected rudeness and ill-mannered behavior from Corn. Although Laird asked her not to provoke the new student, everything turned out quite the opposite. Laird knew that his friend would soon calm down herself, but as colleagues they needed to avoid such scenes in the future. When Corn was examining the drawings, a young master approached him. The boy told Corn that it was already late, suggested finishing tomorrow. The boy agreed and got up from the table. But before the student left, Laird decided to ask what was wrong with him after all. He at least communicated a little with everyone. He said that sometimes for repairs you need not only skills, but also the ability to communicate well with the client. The boy seemed to disagree somewhat and asked if that was really necessary. Korn said that even if he got along with everyone here, it would hardly suddenly improve his repair skills. He was not interested in extra things, he needed to figure things out quickly. The boy suddenly ran out of the workshop. Laird did not have time to say anything to him and just watched where his new apprentice was rushing. After some time, the hero, looking intently at the map, realized that he was lost in this area and could not find Korn's house. The map led him to a completely empty place where there was not a single building. Before taking the boys as apprentices, the young man asked him to write down where he lived. Now, not finding the house, Laird began to suspect that Kornet had lied to him. The boy sighed. The young master knew that if he asked that boy directly, he would hardly say anything, so he decided to continue looking for his house. After 3 hours of fruitless searching, he found nothing. Laird was only tired and decided that tomorrow, when Korn came to training, it would be easier to talk to him, and at that moment he heard a noise in one of the houses. Through the window, he saw Korn next to a woman. It was his mother. She was categorically against her son's proposal, and he did not understand the reasons for her refusal. She laid her head in the bushes. The woman reminded the boy that she had already said more than once. She would no longer invite him to meet his father. Every time she saw his face, memories of that fatal day returned to her mind. Korn wanted to give her another reason for his mother to meet his father again, but she shouted at him to go away, and the woman recoiled, saying she never wanted to see that man again. Emotions overwhelmed Korn. He felt injustice, sadness, and helplessness. The boy tried to hold back tears, and because of this, his body trembled. Finally, Kornet could not stand it and, cursing, ran out of the house. Lear, hiding behind the bushes, watched the boy run away, and although he felt uneasy about interfering in family matters, he could not just abandon his apprentice. Reaching another house, the hero knocked on the door and stood until someone opened it. A man came out onto the porch, greeted him, and asked who had come and whether this guest was a friend of Korn. Liar stood in the doorway and got angry. The boy did not even have time to explain anything, and Korn immediately accused him of stalking and rudely asked him to leave. The father tried to stop his son. The man sharply said that he must stop behaving like that with their guest. Korn only looked angrily at his father and threw at him, "Shut up." The boy immediately ran out of the house and fled. Lair and Father Kornet did not manage to do anything. They stood stunned and watched as the boy ran away. The young gentleman apologized for coming uninvited and introduced himself. He said that he worked as a repairman and recently began teaching Kornet his trade. The man also introduced himself Alphonse, the father of the young apprentice Lair. The man thoughtfully muttered that now everything became clear to him, because lately he was worried about what his son was doing. Alphonse bowed low and asked to forgive his son for causing the host so much trouble. He was sincerely upset, and the man knew well how stubborn his son could be once he decided. He would never back down. Alphonse laughed out loud and said that Lair could refuse to teach Kornet if he wanted, and the man sadly admitted that even with his own son, it was hard to understand each other. He noticed that the young man wanted to talk about Korn and suggested walking with him to the nearest park. They went, "Let's ask if the young gentleman has time for this." When they reached the park, it was already night. They sat on a bench, and Alphonse began to tell what he himself called an awkward story. It turned out that he and Kornet's mother, Een, had divorced, and he admitted that he drank a lot and behaved badly. He knew that his actions had no excuse, but at that time he was drowning in problems at work. Alphonse would end his life with alcohol, and that was selfish towards his family. Lair listened to him attentively. The man said that their divorce with his ex-wife did not happen because of Kornet's son, but because of problems in the relationship, and Alphonse noticed how the child looked exactly like his father. Every day Kornet lives among his parents' quarrels. He saw everything with his own eyes. Now Alphonse talks about it, but could not fix anything. The man firmly shook hands. Lair asked what his relationship with Kornet was now, and Alphonse replied that his son blames himself for his parents' divorce. Father Kornet always dreamed of working in the royal palace, but being a common man, it was hard for him to get in there. He had something he had to protect: his family, Een and little Kornet, who waited for him at home every day. Alphonse threw himself into work wholeheartedly and rapidly climbed the career ladder. Colleagues clearly did not trust him because a commoner began to rise so high in service. The man made a small mistake, and he was fired from his job. This became the beginning of the end of his relationship with his wife. After being fired, Alphonse's life went downhill. Every day he beat and cursed, and the family endured it. Een asked her husband to stop drinking. In such moments, bottles of alcohol were smashed on the floor. The man shouted at the woman to be quiet. He thought she did not understand him. Ain wanted to help Alphonse. She asked him to tell her about his problems because they were his family, and she was ready to support him, but the man seemed not to hear her at all. He told her to shut up and leave him alone. Little Cornet watched his parents' quarrels every day and heard his drunk father talking to his mother. Later, he himself began to imitate Alphonse. One sunny day, Corn noticed a box on a high shelf in his father's office and became interested. He stood on a shaky chair and took it down, and inside lay a beautiful round clock. The boy wanted to take it out of the box, but the chair suddenly wobbled. The clock fell and broke. It no longer showed the time. At that moment, Alphonse entered the room and saw what his son had done. The man was furious. Not hearing Cornet's apologies, Alphonse grabbed his hand and shouted, asking what he had done. The boy felt pain from such a sharp and strong grip. Alphonse looked at his son, slightly offended. Frightened, Corn burst into tears, and the child's crying attracted Ain's attention. The woman immediately ran into the room. She saw a man standing next to their son, firmly holding the boy's hand. Corn was crying, and a broken clock lay beside them. Finally, Lair began to understand why his little student behaved that way. Alphonse told the boy that the silver clock was a memento of him and his wife. It was a gift from the groom to the bride in honor of their wedding. The man was a bit embarrassed to talk about it. This clock was like a memory of the happy days of their married life. Alphonse shrank. He considered himself miserable, recalling that past life he had destroyed himself. He could not comprehend how he could do that to the family he cherished so much. Now all he could do every day was regret. Alphonse realized that Cornet wanted to fix the silver clock because he believed he could fix everything. Lair recalled how the boy so desperately wanted to become his student to fix one thing, and now finally understood his motives. Lair understood why his student was so stubbornly interested only in repairs. He wanted to restore his family with his own hands. Laird watched all this, and suddenly moments flashed before his eyes when he himself sat by the grave with the only person who truly loved that boy. Alphonse's voice distracted him from the dots. He was calling the boy by name. The man noticed that the young gentleman suddenly turned pale. Laird immediately assured him that everything was fine. The young man asked Father Cornet to tell him something else. After talking with Alphonse, Lair entered Cornet's room, who was sitting by the bed. The boy was surprised to see the teacher, but still remained as rude as before. The boy said he had already spoken with his father, and now wanted to talk to the same boy. Laird asked if he could sit next to Cornet. He said with obvious displeasure that the young man could do whatever he wanted. Sitting next to the boy, Laird added that he had been told about Corn's parents and their difficult situation. The boy insisted he knew everything. Cornet, pointing to the silver clock lying on the floor before them, said he was not to blame for the parents' quarrels and their divorce, and the boy added that he did not care about the divorce, he just wanted to fix the clock because he was the one who broke it. Corn added that he perfectly understood why the parents' relationship had worsened. The boy admitted that it hurt him very much. With each word, tears came closer to his eyes. Cornet covered his face with his hands and said that he wanted everyone to be together again. His family was simply torn to pieces, and it was hard for him to admit it. Laird looked at the boy with sympathy and said that time cannot be turned back. They could not change what had already happened, so it did not matter how much time passed, no one could change it, neither a person nor even God himself. Lair stood up and headed to the door. As he left the room, he looked back and stared directly at his little student, and the young boy said he would wait for him in the workshop the next morning. Returning home, Laird told Assia everything, and at the end said that he had done all he could. Assia noticed that he was not himself. Usually, he spoke quietly with people. Laird did not think he had to always tell people what they wanted to hear. His job was simple, to fix what was broken. In a normal situation, the master could even help directly, but Corn was a completely different matter. Assia asked if the boy's problem was different from others. Laird replied that no one would solve it until Corn himself took it on, and until he made a choice, the hero could not change anything. Assia was sure the boy would have to endure pain for this. Laird thought so too, but he was beginning to doubt whether he was mistaken. However, to survive in this world, Corn had to learn to look ahead. The boys did not notice how a boy entered the workshop. He was gasping for breath. Calling him a liar, Corn had asked, "What if he returns nothing? What then?" That boy advised to move forward and warned that facing painful memories was extremely difficult. Cornet had to admit that some things must simply be let go, but never give up. Corn said that he had no choice. He had to try and do everything possible to change everything. He asked the young master to teach him how to make the future better. Laird smiled and agreed to look into the future together with him. They could only crawl toward a bright future and scratch their way through with work and patience. They decided to create it with their own hands. For them, the most important things were sincerity and the desire to make something truly valuable, and nothing more. Under the supervision of Lair Corn, he studied the craft without rest. Every day he worked on the silver watch that he had once broken. The boy was not in a hurry, changing even the smallest detail to later see the result. When everything was ready, Cornet called both parents to the park. They had no idea they would meet. Alphonse sat on a bench and worried whether his son was okay, because he had suddenly called him to the meeting, and looking up, he saw Ayan and was as surprised as she was. The man was glad to see her, but his ex-wife was not. Seeing her reaction, Alphonse suggested at least talking to her, since it had come to that. The woman sat next to him. She asked if everything was all right with Cornet. Alphonse replied that his son was fine. He said the boy had found what he truly wanted to do and had become an apprentice to a repair master. Ayn smiled and said that was wonderful news. Her ex-husband agreed, and after a short silence, the woman quietly apologized for everything that had happened in their marriage. She knew how hard it was for her husband at work, but thought only of herself and even forgot about their son. Ayn said they should have a proper conversation. The man immediately began to deny everything because he considered himself guilty of everything, tried to take all the blame on himself, and spoke kind words to his wife so that Ayn would not feel guilty. The woman kept reproaching herself. She regretted not thinking about the corn because she simply ran away from the problems herself and blamed everything on her husband, and Alphonse said it was because he was not responsible enough. I knew her husband was actually a very good person, and even now he was again trying to carry everything on himself, as before. At that moment, Korn approached them. He said that it had been very hard for all of them then. The parents looked around and saw their son. The boy quietly approached them and apologized for making them wait. Korn admitted that she had done everything she could and knew that it was impossible to return everything to how it was. But he was not going to give up, so he went to study with the master, pulling out a silver watch that worked. The boy said he wanted to see his parents happy. Seeing and understanding how much Korn tried and worried about them, Ayn and Alphonse ran up to him and hugged him tightly. For a moment they became a family again. Meanwhile, Lair was in his workshop. He looked out the window at the night sky and whispered, "What a beautiful moon."